So what happens when a country's currency all of a sudden becomes one of the hottest things on the planet? Well, in 2025, Jordan found out. An $18.5 billion tidal wave of foreign demand came crashing into its economy, which, created this huge opportunity, but also a massive headache. We're going to unpack how this crazy economic surge exposed the cracks in our global financial system and sparked a whole new way of thinking about the future of money.
Just let that number sink in for a second. $18.5 billion. That's the record-smashing demand for Jordan's currency in a single year. And look, this isn't just some abstract number on a spreadsheet. We're talking about real money from tourists buying gifts, from businesses paying local staff, from foreign students paying tuition, all flooding into one country.
So this really gets to the heart of it, right? What happens when you have all that economic energy and it slams right into a wall? A global financial system that's often painfully slow, surprisingly expensive, and just incredibly complicated. This clash between modern needs and old-school infrastructure created a problem that needed a totally new kind of solution.
All right, so here's our roadmap. First, we'll dive into what was happening in Jordan. Then we'll zoom out and look at the global money maze that honestly affects all of us. After that, we'll introduce the big idea, a digital local currency. We'll see how it actually works, and then we'll get to the biggest question of all. Could this change everything?
Okay, so first things first, let's follow the money. Where exactly did this unbelievable flood of cash even come from?
Wow, okay. These numbers really paint a picture. The single biggest piece of the pie? Foreign businesses. They needed over $8 billion just to operate. And nipping at their heels were tourists, spending a staggering $7.2 billion. I mean, think about that. Just those two groups are pretty much the whole story.
You add it up, and yeah, a combined 82% of all that money came from just businesses trying to do business and tourists trying to, well, be tourists. See, this isn't about some complicated high finance stuff. This is the real everyday economy. And every single one of those transactions was getting stuck in the same global bottleneck.
Now, let's zoom out for a second, because this really isn't just a Jordan story. What happened there is basically a perfect spotlight on a universal problem, the sheer, frustrating difficulty of moving money across borders. Welcome to what we're calling the global money maze.
Man, this quote just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? If you've ever sent money to family overseas or tried to pay an invoice in another country, you know exactly what this feels like. This crazy expensive maze with hidden fees and delays that make you want to pull your hair out. It's a system that basically runs on friction. So let's actually break down what that friction looks like. You've got these high fees from all the middlemen taking their cut. Payments can take days, literally days, to settle. Then there's this thing called cash leakage, where money just kind of vanishes from the formal, taxable economy. And maybe the biggest issue here is that a country's own local payment systems get pushed aside for the big international networks, which means regulators can't even get a clear picture of what's going on.
Okay, so the problem is a giant, confusing maze. So what's the solution? Well, you don't try to find your way through it, you build a bridge right over the top of it. And that brings us to the core idea here, a digital local currency.
Let's think about it with an analogy. You know, when you travel, you bring one of those universal power adapters, right? It lets you plug your stuff into any wall, anywhere. What if you had that, but for money? A single adapter that lets any country's financial system talk to any other one.
And that, in a nutshell, is what a digital local currency, or DLC, is all about. Now, let's be super clear about something. This is not a new cryptocurrency. Not at all. It's much better to think of it like a software layer, a kind of universal translator that's built to connect the payment systems and the regulated banks that countries already have in place.
And here it is in the real world. This abstract idea gets a real name and a face. JordanPay. It's designed to be that specific bridge for the Jordanian dinar, connecting Jordan's own financial system to the rest of the globe.
And this part is absolutely crucial. So much of tech is about moving fast and breaking things, right? This is the exact opposite. It's designed from day one to work with central banks and regulators, not to go around them. It's built to be a collaborator, not a bulldozer.
Okay, so that's the big idea. But how does this actually work on the ground? How does a system like JordanPay take that $18.5 billion flow and actually make it move smoother? Let's get into the nitty-gritty.
Here's the secret sauce. You don't have to build a whole new system from the ground up. The key is to unlock the power of the systems that Jordan already has. We're talking about their existing payment networks, their local rails, like Click and JordanPay. Get this, by 2025, the amount of money flowing through these local systems was already more than the country's entire GDP. The infrastructure is there, and it's powerful.
Okay, let's take a real-world example. A foreign student in Jordan. The old way? A total nightmare. They'd hit this bureaucratic brick wall of know your customer rules, making it almost impossible to even open a bank account to get money from home. Now check out the new way. A simple tourist wallet lets that same student load up local currency instantly and start paying for rent, books, you name it. The problem is just gone.
Or what about a tourist? You know the drill. You're stuck choosing between getting ripped off at a currency exchange kiosk or getting hammered with fees on your credit card. With this new system, though, it's a complete game changer. Imagine a tourist from, say, Saudi Arabia just pulls out their phone, scans a QR code, and pays a merchant in Jordan using their own bank app from back home. The two national systems just talk to each other. It's totally seamless.
So you see how this works for students, for tourists, in just one country, and it kind of makes you ask, okay, where does this go from here? And this is where we get to the biggest idea of them all. If you take one thing away from this whole explainer, please make it this quote. The whole point is not to get rid of local currencies like the dinar or the dollar. It's to make them stronger. I mean, when you make it cheap and easy for the entire world to use a country's own money, you're not weakening it. You're basically giving it superpowers.
And the vision here is massive. It's a sprawling, interconnected network of equals. Yeah, you see JordanPay here, but you can also picture an America Pay, a Brazil Pay, an Emirates Pay. Each country builds its own sovereign bridge for its own currency, and they all link up through a shared, cooperative framework.
And all of this leaves us with one last, huge question to chew on. For decades, global finance has been dominated by just a handful of massive, centralized networks. But what happens when you build an alternative from the bottom up, one that's based on strengthening local systems instead of replacing them? Could a cooperative network like this truly, fundamentally remake the map of money as we know it?